The mirror made me do it, I swear. Submitted by Ms. Sarah 0215. I'm looking for a mirror. You would be too if the same thing happened to you. Reflections aren't as harmless as they seem. No matter what I do, I can't bring myself to look in the mirror again. Like most girls, all I wanted while growing up was a happy life. A marriage and a small, beautiful family. When I was 10, my dad cheated on my mom and moved out. Mom suddenly had to cope with raising a family and working 2 jobs just for us to barely get by. She chose to cope with it by drinking. Little by little, the drinking increased, and the time we spent together reduced. Until eventually, all I was to her was a means to let out all her anger and frustration. One such day stands out. In particular, Mom had bought a really expensive wine bottle. We argued. As usual, it was almost as though she valued the bottle more than me. 14-year-old me thought it was a good idea to smash the bottle. It wasn't. She got down on her knees, crying desperately to save what was left, trying to lick the wine off the floor. When I saw that, all the anger turned to pity and sadness. I wanted to help her, so I tried to get her to stop. She turned around and cut me with a piece of glass. The pain was unbearable, and I shouted. That didn't cause her to stop though. She continued to cut me with a cold look in her eyes. Over and over again. I panicked and kicked her off me and locked myself in my room. I considered running away, but I knew that I was safer here than I ever would be outside. The cutting continued. She didn't care and told me that if I ever told anyone or showed them my scars, I wouldn't be alive the next day. To the outside world, she was the perfect mom, even making sure to buy me the fanciest of full-sleeve clothes to hide my scars. The school was the only place I had any kind of normalcy. I studied hard. I wanted to make it big. Anything to get away from her. When I was 20, I came back home to find her dead. She had died from alcohol poisoning. I couldn't stop smiling, then laughing, then rejoicing. I was finally free. It wasn't long before I met Jacob. One of my friends set me up on a blind date. She said it was the most handsome guy from our school. Could this be it? My chance at finally having a normal family. Maybe, maybe not. I had to try. We really hit it off. Can you imagine? All these years, I was going through so much. Making sure my sleeves covered my arms and figuring out ways to survive the pain were more important than wasting time thinking of boys. We dated for a year, and then he finally asked me the question, and I answered the obvious. We married and moved into our new house. Jacob's business was going really well, so I didn't work and looked after our home instead. I stayed home most of the time, but we were really happy about spending time with each other. We laughed, we repainted our house, we were ready to have babies. Remember everything I ever dreamed of? This was so much better than any of that. We tried for a couple of months, but we didn't get lucky. Jacob was always supportive and never discouraged me or made me feel like he was disappointed. He supported me through every hurdle in our married life. It was not long before the dreams transformed into nightmares, the happiness turned into depression. Why was I not able to get pregnant? Every time I saw other couples with babies, it just killed me. We decided to try some more since it's not always easy to get pregnant for most couples. The depression got worse when Jacob got promoted and had to spend long hours at work. I barely even got to see him anymore. He was always exhausted after work and fell asleep right after getting home. I started to feel more and more alone. Decorating the house was one of the ways I could keep myself occupied. The antique store became one of my favorite places to escape to. There was a mirror on display. I wondered why I had never noticed it before. It had a golden frame with intricate work that made it look really expensive. Looking into it felt like I was watching someone else, not myself. That would have thrown most people off, but I was in love with this mirror. It was perfect for our home. I just hoped Jacob liked it. I was willing to throw it out if he didn't. He was a bit thrown off by the reflection at first, but he liked it too. He loved that it was antique and wanted to keep it. He kissed me and slept right after dinner. I tried to as well, but I couldn't. I was alone once again, in my own bed. It was just me and my reflection in the mirror. The darkness only made it worse. Even with all the decorations, all the antiques, the house still felt empty. I felt empty. The last time I felt empty was when Mom was still alive. I remembered the first time she started drinking. I remembered the first time she cut me. I remembered when the divorce happened. The divorce papers were still waiting to be signed, and Mom was still desperately trying to talk my dad out of it. That was until his rich girlfriend walked into the room. He had already got her pregnant. That's when Mom just stopped talking, her heart broken and all hope lost. The memory of her face haunts me to this day. We never saw my dad again. For a split second, I saw my face turn into Mom's face in the mirror. The exact same expression she was wearing when Dad's girlfriend first walked in. It took me a while to realize what just happened, and I ended up snapping out of it immediately. I was scared, so I tried to sleep by hugging Jacob. I imagined what life would be like with us having a baby, and I went to sleep, trying to put on a positive front. It was no use. Jacob's work got even more hectic, and he started to come home even later. His business was not doing well, and we would get into fights often. Staying awake, staring into the darkness, into the mirror became routine now. Sometimes, I would even catch glimpses of images moving at the corner of my eye. Eventually, the mirror would give me this feeling of companionship, and that I'm not alone. This went on until I began to see myself moving. The more I stared at the mirror, the more I would move. Then the voice started to speak to me. I tried convincing myself that it was just my thinking, but the voice was so deep and had a different tone. I couldn't convince myself anymore. I would see myself in the mirror, with different expressions. Expressions of pain and anger that would scare me a lot. Her thoughts were dark and so very violent. She often asked me to cut myself to escape the pain. This didn't stop me talking with her though, for I was so lonely. I knew it wasn't me and I didn't have to worry too much since I could only hear her while I was staring at the mirror, at her. The fights with Jacob got worse. On one of the days, our fight went particularly bad. I was miserable. I had no one to go to. Except I did. I rushed to the mirror to speak with her again. There she was, waiting. She was always there for me. Jacob shouted at me from the kitchen. I had enough. This had to stop. This time when I saw him, all my feelings for him were replaced with anger and this rage welling up inside of me. I saw a knife lying on the table, still wet from the vegetables I had been cutting up earlier. The voice spoke to me. She had never spoken to me outside the bedroom and especially while I wasn't looking at her. She told me to throw the knife at Jacob. At that moment I didn't think twice, I just threw the knife. Jacob shouted no, the sound echoing through the whole kitchen. It felt like it snapped me out of a trance. I looked down, and Jacob was sitting on the floor. My aim was terrible, luckily, and everything was fine. Jacob didn't feel the same, though. In all my years married to him, I had never seen his eyes with that much fear in them. It was as though he was a different person. I tried to comfort him, but he tried to get as far away from me as possible. Seeing him like that broke my heart. I couldn't bear it when I tried reaching out to him, and he moved away as much as he could. I was crying and apologizing over and over. I broke down and fell on my knees, covering my face with my hands. I couldn't take it anymore. I felt something warm holding my back. I looked up, and it was Jacob. He cried and hugged me tightly. I hugged him back. For those few moments, it felt like everything in the world was perfect again. We thought it would help if we tried marriage counseling. I never told him about the mirror. I had already scared him enough. He started to stay at home more often. We started trying for a baby again. Maybe it won't be long before everything will be perfect once more. Even though he was at home, he would still be getting lots of calls from work. This meant he couldn't focus on me fully, even when he was with me. I was still happy, we were still trying, and this time I really felt it wouldn't be too long until we started a family. I wasn't wrong. It wasn't long. I was finally pregnant with our child. I finally got a normal, happy family of my own. I could finally feel what that would be like. The day Jacob found out, he was easily the happiest man on earth. He hugged me and laughed with me in joy. We were really happy. We were so happy after such a long time. I should have known then that something was going to go terribly wrong. It was almost as though I was never meant to feel true happiness. It was like any other night. I was just done with the dishes. My little one was growing fast, and even normal everyday chores became so much more difficult. I was exhausted, so I slowly made my way to the bedroom. Jacob was on his phone as usual. I usually never cared much for whatever he spoke on the phone, but just this once I thought I would eavesdrop. I still remember the exact words I heard. "I can't do this anymore. She is pregnant with my baby, and it would be really bad to do this to her." I couldn't hear much of the other voice, but they were arguing silently. Maybe it would have been different if I had stopped listening. "I do love you so much. I want this divorce as much as you do, but I need some time to talk to her. I will tell her, Meredith. It's you I want to be with forever. Give me time till tomorrow." He cut the call and went to sleep. I always thought I was alone, but that night I learned what true loneliness means. Jacob was all I had. The one person I thought I could always rely on, the one thing that would never change in my life. I was wrong. I was so stupid. All those nights I was lonely, he was sleeping with other women. My family, My beautiful family was ruined. I thought of all the ways I could keep my marriage safe. I felt a familiar presence. That's right, I was not alone. I will never be alone. She appeared in the mirror once again, a perfect reflection of me. Something was different about her this time, something eerie. Her eyes were completely black. She told me to kill him, that I'm never meant to live happily. All I'm destined for is for the same fate Mom had. It all happened all over again. I finally truly understood how Mom felt. Hurting someone would make it better, maybe then they would understand what it feels like. The next words turned my heart cold. He never loved you. You will never have a happy family. Everything felt lifeless and without purpose. All this sadness turned to a flash of intense anger. She told me killing him was the only way to get over the pain. To end the cycle. She asked me to kill him, to hand over his soul to her so she could give him what he deserved. The angrier I got, the more real she seemed. The moon outside reflected on the mirror, and there she was, standing right beside me. The mirror had no reflection anymore. She handed me a knife. It looked like a piece of the mirror. I heard her voice again. She said my family had come to an end. That my baby would grow up never knowing a real father. That drove me over the edge. Whatever happened to me was okay, but how could Jacob do this to our unborn child? I couldn't control the rage anymore. The mirror was sharp and entered his heart so easily. He woke up in pain. The mirror was easy to pierce his throat with as well, so were his eyes. The mirror didn't seem to have any trouble even when I stabbed him all over his entire body. I kept on going until I heard the voice again. Good job. Your husband is safe with me forever. Now it's your baby's turn. Before I realized she took the knife from my hand and stabbed me in my stomach. I collapsed in pain. It was unbearable, and I was crying. Not just because of the pain, I was crying for Jacob, I was crying for my child. I heard police sirens and saw their lights. The mirror still didn't seem to reflect them for some reason. I woke up in a hospital. A lot of people questioned me, and I told them everything. Sinister woman kills her unborn baby and stabs her husband was how the case was closed. I was diagnosed with schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. I guess it was a relief that I didn't have to go to jail. Being in a mental asylum was horrible too, but the voice started fading, and the medicines helped. I was on my best behavior. I found I could continue returning to my normal self as long as I avoided reflections and mirrors. That was until today. Today, I saw an ad for the mirror in the newspaper. The exact same mirror. I was horrified and threw the paper away. I was thinking about everything that happened until now, and I have decided to get past my fears. I don't ever want this happening again to any girl with the same dreams I had. Please, if you have the mirror fitting this description, mentioned in today's Daily Express, please break it and destroy it the first chance you get. I hope my story helps in convincing you that keeping the mirror isn't worth it. Do not look into the mirror under any circumstances. Do not end up as I did.